Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Monday, August the 13th. This will serve as our chart lesson for today. And it really, we had a little bit of a downtrend that opened the day, but it reversed mid-morning, early, 10:30 range, and then it was all uphill thereafter. So really, it's just a big range. It's a big, maybe a 10-point range or so is really what we had for the day. And the trading lately has just been more of the same. And you see, we had that kind of day Friday. We had that kind of day Thursday. Um, Here's Wednesday. Here's Tuesday of last week. There's Monday of last week. And all last week we had the same kind of day, and it's just been more of the same. And the thing you got to be careful of is just by the time you start to spot this, it'll have lulled you to sleep, and then we'll get a huge trend day that just keeps going. It'll break out one way or the other and keep going, and then everybody will be, looking for it to bounce again. But the clues that, you got to look for is you don't get an extended trend. You move and then you go into range, you move down, then you go into range, you move down, then you go into range, you move up, you go into range. That's a good clue that it's choppy. Uh, because if you get a strong trend day, it just keeps going and going and going, and that's the difference. And you could even say we had a real weak downtrend and a weak uptrend, and actually that's a pretty good move back up. So it's really just a failed break lower, and really your lows are probably right across there, maybe even there. That's what I would call the lows for the day, which were somewhat of the that was kind of the same area we were working off of that we broke below and tried to get below from Friday and then got back above. And that's really the same thing. We tested that again and then we went higher. We just couldn't go any lower. We really struggled to get down there. So, I started with my line right in here. And you kind of work off that because once we broke below that, it acted as resistance and then it held until right in here and then we went higher. And this is just after lunch. So let's look at the trades. We opened up coming down, but we made this little double bottom type deal here. We had this little failed break lower. It closed on its high, and then prices kind of worked higher. From that point, there was an entry right here. This was worth taking simply because this was right at the open, and you get this real big bearish looking bar that fakes everybody out. You get a little double bottom. You break below it, and then it's all, then we come back up and we test these highs again, then you kind of get this little double top up here, and you really could draw that like that. I like to look at those. We kind of had some closes across there that we broke above, but you could draw it like that. You got your double top, you got those little ticks above, and you could have entered there, but it was a little bit suspect because, even though we've got some dojis in there, it's mostly green, it's mostly up, but when we got this little second entry short here, it was definitely worth going short, thinking that we're going to come back down here and test this again and maybe come down here and test this. And we struggled to get below this little area right here, but then we shot on down and we came down and tested this area and then got stuck in there. So this was a nice little second entry short here off this high. And then we had another second entry short. And this was more of a trap here. This is kind of a breakout pullback short. And to be honest, you could have gone short on either bar. Let me make it a little bigger. You kind of had a two-legged pullback right here. You can see one leg up, then a pullback, and a second leg up. And we had this double top, and we broke higher right there. And notice how nothing is closing above the lows from over here. So what was this acting as support is now acting as resistance. So you could have gone short below that bar. And it got kind of spooky when it broke down there and turned up because I went short right here and not over here. And, it got a little bit iffy, but as long as you had your stop above this bar or at 2 points, you were fine. And you definitely, when it turned up again and then turned back down, you could have gone short here. But you got to be figuring we're probably coming to test these lows. And there's plenty of room there. And we actually went much lower than that. But you see, once it got down here and tested these lows, it got stuck again. And that's what just keeps happening over and over and over as we just keep sliding down or sliding up and testing support and resistance. And that was just another, we slid down, and you know, you can see we're on both sides of that line all the way across there. So, you know, it can't really, it's not really acting as good support, but it's not acting as good resistance either. So you don't want to be going long here because there's no really good setup. Anytime you got a really good bullish bar, it was too high or it never broke above it or whatever. So there's just too much overlap right here. Unless you got long way down here, um, this wasn't worth going for. If you got trapped right here, I actually did go long right here, but I got out of this trade. I didn't quite get 4 ticks. When it touched my 4-tick order, my exit order was right here. It touched that and turned straight down again. So I just exited with a tick. I think I made 1 tick off that trade. And at that point, I figured, well, we're probably going lower, and we're probably coming down here to test the next area. So you drop this line down to here, and you can see that's exactly where we went. And that's where, that's what we were gunning for. And you got to be thinking, look at all those closes across there. And so there's still room to scalp out. This is a 2-legged pullback to the EMA. And when that broke higher and created that double top and turned down, that was a pretty good place to go short. But that was the only place, because by the time you got to here, there's not enough room left, look, to scalp out. And you see exactly where it bounced at the next area right there. And so you got to keep that in mind. You got to know you got enough room. And so if you don't have enough room to scalp out, you're better off just to skip the trade. So, by the time this bar closed, it's really too late because you're getting short right here, and then you don't have much room. And it would have worked. You would have had to ride this pullback out, and then you got another chance here. But again, it's so close there. And you see how we struggled to get through there. And even though we got through there, unless you could get short up here closer to the highs, it's just not worth the risk. And you see that turned out to be the low of the day. So if you didn't have room and you didn't get out, then you're stuck because it's all uphill from there on. So keep that in mind, when you're looking, because I get a lot of questions about these kind of setups right here. Look at all those overlapping bars. Look at all the dojis in there. This is really just a little trading range right here. And if you draw your lines, you'll be able to see it a little better. And now, does that look more clear? And if you're using your closes, which you should be, when you get in these tight ranges, there's just not really enough room to scalp in and out of there. And but the trend is down. And what you got to figure is usually when you trade into a range, you're going to fail out the top side or fake you out one side. Or the main thing to remember is that usually it's going to continue on out the side the same way it traded in. So if we traded down into this range, odds are we're going to trade down when we break out successfully, and that's what happened. And but it's just really dangerous going short, where you got all this support and resistance on these really choppy kind of days, and I just didn't like it. And so I didn't take any of these trades, and I didn't mark any. The first opportunity you really had to go long at a decent one, there was a little bit of overlap here, but we never really broke lower first and then went up and trapped everybody. You kind of had one here, so if you had a buy order right here, you might have got scared out of that too. So there's just no real reason to be buying that because there's nothing that looks really bullish until right here. That's the first real sign of bullish. Even coming down through here, this looks a little bit like rejection. But notice how we didn't close on the top, and it's not really a good rejection bar. You want it to close on its top very high and tick up pretty quickly for it to be real rejection, and that's just not real rejection. This was the first time we had some really bullishness, and then we pulled back and we made this little trap here. So this was a pretty good trade. You got to be figuring we're coming back to test this again. And maybe this, and so this is a second entry long off this new low, and we did have some bullishness here. And if you're drawing your little short-term trend line, somebody asked me to talk about that, so look at that. There's your short-term trend line right down through there, and so that's the first time we broke above it, and then we pulled back, and we made that little trap, and then we closed on the high right there. And that's a second entry long. So this is not a great setup, but if you took this, I want to say it wasn't a bad trade either, because you got to figure we're coming back to here. So I'm mentioning that even though I didn't mark it. it's a fairly good setup. But then we got right back up here testing these lows across here, and they moved up a little bit to right across there, just like so. And you can see that right there. And then we're kind of stuck in a little range again, and really it looks, oops, it looks more like that right there. So now we got a little bit bigger range at a little bit lower area than we had right here. And I bet you if you measure these two, they'd probably be about the same in width. I talked about that some Friday, so remember. But the trend has been down, and there's not a real strong trend down through here or anything, but there's a trend line coming right down through there, kind of like that. And we broke it, and we made a nice little two-legged measured move up. Then we tried to go higher, made a double top. We tried to go lower, and then here's another second entry short after a double top here. And this gives you any of these bars right across here were probably okay after we ticked higher and then turned down, because now you got a real bear. So you could have gone short right there, and you see it did back up again. But when it turned back down again, you could have jumped on right here too. It's a little more suspect jumping on here, but if you got on here, you survived it and it went lower. But notice how you're getting short at the highs of this little range now, and you're not getting short way down here in the middle or way down here at the low. There's enough room to get out before getting back down here and testing the last lows, which are really right across there. And so so this was, entering here was okay. By the time we bounced here again, see here, by the time you get here, there's no room. There's no room to go long either, even though we did break higher here, and we went up and tested these highs. And you can see that across there. And now we're testing these highs, and that's where we went to. We got through these, so now you're looking for the next one. And if you get through here, you're looking for this one, and look where we tried to go there, and then we found a little resistance right in there. So just remember that. You're always trying to figure out if you got enough room, if we break lower, that we're going to test the next support, or we're going to test the breakout area or whatever. And this is a two-legged pullback, but this is a nice little trap here. You got a second entry short. You're making higher highs and higher lows. This is right off the EMA. This is a breakout pullback long out of this little breakout area. And there's probably enough room to get out before you get back to these, across these highs here. You're getting long at the very low, and there's always a chance you're going to continue higher too. But you want to make sure you got at least enough room to get out before getting to that last high, which is really kind of right there. If you're using the closes, it's kind of iffy, but because we broke higher, it's a breakout pullback long as well, and you've got to figure we're probably in a range today, and we're probably going to test, keep working higher and test some of these more important highs up here from the earlier part of the morning. That's what I'm thinking anyway. So if you took this one, this is a good trade, and it's really one of our stronger trades. It's a breakout pullback long, but most importantly, it's a two-legged pullback to the EMA with a short trap right here at the EMA. And you see it's also kind of a little breakout pullback to test those high, that breakout right there. And you see that we touched it to the tick. So it served a breakout pullback to this and to this. It took care of both of them at the same time. And then this is a breakout pullback long right here. And that's a really, you see that little tick lower, and that really, now that's rejection. Prices moved higher and closed right on the high. So that's strong enough to say, hey, we got to get long because we're heading higher now. And you see that was a nice move up. And by that time, it's too late to take anything up here. It's 2 o'clock right here. By the time this pulls back, it's 2:30. This is a pretty good setup, and this is definitely a good setup. And you should be looking at this trend line up here. I don't have it on here, but it really starts right in there, and you can kind of see that trend line. If you draw it off the closes, it kind of, there you go, it kind of covers it all the way up. So you can see that that's you're coming off the trend line here, you're coming off the trend line here, and this actually came off the trend line as well, so that gives it more merit as well. And that's where all your best entries happen. There's your next one, and there's your next one. See how the best moves all come right off that trend line? And even coming down, the best moves come off that trend line every time. And so draw even your short-term trend lines. But somebody wanted me to talk about short-term trend lines. The only real difference between, I call all of these just kind of minor short-term trend lines because it's really a big trading range. And let's get these out of the way. But all the same, they still work the same. The rules are the same. The only difference I will say on a short-term, that's a hard one to say for me today, trend line is that when you get a break of it on these more minor trend lines is you don't always make a new extreme. So normally, let me give you an example. Normally when we would break this trend line coming down through here, we kind of break it right here. Our rule is we're looking for prices to make a new low. But what you'll see that happens most of the time on these short-term trend lines is prices won't make a new low or a new high. They won't make a new extreme is the way I should be wording that. What they'll do is they'll pull back and test the trend line, and this might actually be a little higher like that right there. So that probably looks a little better because now we're coming right off that bar. It catches those closes right across there. It's catching those. So that's a really good, that looks really good. And now after the fact, it's easier to find because, see, we pulled back and tested that trend line. That is more indicative of what you'll see on a short-term trend line versus a long-term trend line. We won't break the trend line and come and make a new extreme by making a new low down here. Generally what will happen is prices will pull back and kiss that trend line or test it and then reverse real quick. And you see that nice little reversal bar. And that would have given that trade there more merit too, if you were drawing those trend lines. And then you see coming up, well, we haven't broken it really yet, so that was kind of hard. But let's go over and look at this one from the overnight and see what it looks like. It probably would have looked something like maybe that right there, but even that right there probably would have worked. If you draw it off those first few closes, I'm thinking that's probably it right there. But you could have drawn it either way. You still get the same kind of thing. Let's assume that was it right there, coming up right through those closes or whatever and touching those first two bars. Let me draw that a little different. If you caught those first couple of bars and closes right there, you see we didn't even get back to kiss that one, but I'm thinking that's probably more like it right there. And we came back and tested it right there, and then we tried to go lower and we came back and tested it again. But notice we don't make a new extreme. We're just coming back and we kissed that trend line a couple of times, and that's kind of what you see on a short-term trend line. And you don't see the trend line rules of making a new extreme do not hold as well. You tend to more see pull back and test the trend line, or maybe pull back and make a double bottom, and then prices reverse or a double top or whatever. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But that was pretty much it for today. I'm getting this out a little bit later today. I had they had a meeting, a booster meeting for my son and his football team, so I had to break away from that and then come back and wrap this up a little bit later. So it's been a long day for me, so I'm going to get out of here. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.